Hi all, this is Skate, and today we're going to have a look at the FV4202, the Tier 10 British medium tank. It wasn't too long ago I did a video on the Centurion 7.1, the Tier 9 British medium tank, and I made a couple of comments in there which I said people will either agree with or disagree with. One of them was I feel more confident in Centurion 7.1 than I do in this tank, and that still stands true. I prefer the Centurion 7.1. I'm not saying this is a bad tank, I just feel more confident in that Centurion. The second comment I make was on the Centurion, I fit a rammer, not calibrated shells. Many people agreed, and many people disagreed. So on the 7.1, due to the poor rate of fire, I prefer a rammer. However, on this, I fit calibrated shells. Another thing worth noting, which is important in my book, in update 4.9, this FV4202 and the Centurion 7.1 will both receive a rate of fire buff. They will both have 0.5 seconds taken off the reload. I'm pretty happy with that. I think these things deserve it. But I still wanted to go ahead and make this video prior to the buffs because I wanted to get a video out discussing the tank. And let's be fair, 0.5 seconds off the reload is going to make a difference. However, it's not going to change the playstyle of this tank. It's just going to make it slightly better at what it does. And what it does best is work on the flanks, because on the flanks you can use that Hesh, and on the flanks you can use that Hesh damn well. The other thing about being on the flank is in theory you should get less focus fire, because there is no hope in hell of virtually anything bouncing that turret. Actually no, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but that is the approach I will take with this tank. I will go with the mindset of whatever's shooting at me is going to penetrate my turret. When you are using the full gun depression on this tank, you will get bounces off the area above the gun. It's quite surprising actually, however, I don't think it's reliable, and this is one of the reasons I prefer the Centurion 7.1 to the FV4202. I'm more confident to poke a ridge, and you can see that E5, he's sitting waiting for me to poke out from the same position. I'm not going to. But that is the thing with this. With this tank, you constantly want to be working the flank. You constantly want to be the tank not being focused. If a tank or an enemy red tank is pointing at you, that means you can't use your Hesh effectively. You can't maximize your DPM. And, well, let's be fair, your armor's not going to reliably bounce them if they're pointing at your turret. The upper plate on this thing, by the way, is absolutely fantastic. It is such a ridiculously bouncy front upper plate. But everything else on it is pennable as hell. So it kind of makes it irrelevant to a degree. You do get some bounces off it if you're using the maximum gun depression. It's quite interesting. This is a poor play by me. I came out when I should have waited, and I missed my shot. No, I get that one. I missed several shots on the grill in this game, and I think that makes the difference between winning or losing this game. I missed that one as well, and I'm going to miss another one. There's an example of getting a bounce off that front upper plate. But yeah, this game is a loss, but I wanted to include it because things like misses like that make or break this tank. Working on the flank, making silly mistakes and allowing a grill to penetrate me make all the difference. There's another miss. That tank would be dead by now, which means I could turn around and deal with the 50B, which is about to rear-end me now. I could have been turned around ready to address that if I just finished that grill quicker, but it means we did 4,562 damage and we lost. Now that's not the tank's fault, that's my fault. I made several mistakes in that game, and I paid for it. I also don't have this thing fully equipped yet. You could see from the screen back then, I haven't got my vertical stabilizers on this thing, and it makes one hell of a difference to the tank. Especially as, if you're using your Hesh a lot, you need that accuracy, you need that aim timing, so you can pinpoint those weak spots and cause maximum damage. You'll notice at the start of the last game, the first thing I did was switch to the Hesh. That's not an uncommon thing to do in this tank. I kind of treat the Hesh as the standard ammo, and I changed my playstyle to suit that, because you could use the heat gun, or you can use the Hesh gun, but I think the Hesh gun changes the playstyle on this tank For example, if I'm using the gun which fires heat right now, if a bunch of heavies came around the corner, I know I could switch and penetrate a couple of times. If a bunch of heavies came around the corner right now, I'm not going to penetrate them frontally with my APCR or my Hesh. I may struggle. Well, you could penetrate the lower plates, but if they're angling up well, it is going to be a struggle in comparison to using heat. Which is why when you're using the gun with Hesh, you need to make sure that if you're spotted and you're facing them, you need to try and relocate as best you can, unless there is some way you can penetrate on the tank, like the cheeks on that E5 earlier. As soon as he turned his gun slightly away from us, it meant we could pen his cheeks. And that falls in line with the armor layout of this tank. It's very delicate. Anything is going to pen that turret pretty much. So when you have got something pointing at you, what I like to do personally is try and relocate, or in this circumstance, make that T-54E1 think I have run away. And in doing so, you'd hope that he's completely disappeared. What the hell? I didn't even know that happened. But they think you've run away, and in this sort of circumstance, it means you can use your Hesh permanently. Because we've got the flanks and the back of things, and we've got the weak shots, and that guy tried to Hesh me and failed. In all fairness, I tried to Hesh him, and I failed as well. But yeah, the Hesh with calibrated shells, you're looking 231mm of penetration, and with the calibrated shells, your APCR goes up to 268. Both very, very nice figures. The difference comes the moments before the 0.5 second rate of fire buff. You've got 2,828 DPM when you're running the calibrated shells and your APCR. Switch to your Hesh, and you have 3,555. That's one hell of a chunk more. So to use that Hesh correctly and to take advantage of it, you either need to be looking for targets which are weaker. I mean, that guy's below the APCR average damage roll, so it made sense to shoot the APCR at him. But when you've got the back of tanks like that, again, he's below average, but when you've got the back of tanks like that and they have lots of hit points, you can really work that Hesh well. And that's heavily maximising the DPM of this tank. I'll show you a clip after this battle to give you an example of what I mean. It's only a quick clip, but it's a nice example of exactly why I try to play it the way I do. But here we are now using the Hesh against the T-54E1, and you can see just putting it through that guy's upper plate as we came down, you're doing huge damage rolls. So if you're doing a one-on-one versus another medium tank, you'll want to be using that Hesh. The downside, of course, is it burns credits. I'm not running a premium account on that game, and I've only just realised myself and that 140 had exactly the same base XP. Here's the clip I want to show you. Well, not this part of it. We're just shooting at the front of an IS from long range as it stands. And I'm not using Hesh because it won't be reliable at this range. I could get the upper plate and very easily pen it. However, there's a good chance of hitting the spaced armor, there's a good chance of hitting the track, and it just not being useful. It's against the Jaegeru. Some tanks you could come flying around the corner, take his track, and then sit on the side trying to perma-track him, basically. I mean, by here, watch. Instead of trying, we're going to track him first, as you would do. You do this in every medium tank. Now, if I was in one of the other mediums with a faster rate of fire, I would sit on that corner by that building and just keep going for the track shot on the wheel. In this circumstance, I want to be getting on the back of him. It seems a trivial thing to point out, but you'd be surprised how much you don't see it done. And it's the difference between, yeah, you can track him in position, but doing that and keeping my momentum going around the building, it means I can do huge amounts of damage more. In that circumstance, I didn't really, because the rest of my team finished them off. However, it was a nice example of what I mean anyway. If we look at that example from a perspective I didn't have anyone to back me up, I would have just been perma-tracking the side of him and slowly doing 2,800 damage per minute. If I went around the back, keeping my momentum like I did, we were on the back of him, we would have dealt with him a lot quicker. And that can be the difference between a make or break. And again, to some this may seem fairly obvious, but if I was in a T62A or a 140, or even a Batchat, I probably would have sat there clipping at his track, knowing that he couldn't repair and turn around. And that's something you'd probably do in a lot of medium tanks, because you know you've got him tracked. But in the circumstance where trying to maximise your Hesh, because that's all you have to think is maximise Hesh, maximise Hesh. And this game is, in my opinion, the pinnacle example of putting yourself in positions and using the Hesh. And if you want my honest opinion, why would you drive one of these things with heat? And this is why I was so happy the Hesh came back. Because I could APCR that, granted, in any medium tank. But the Hesh gives me much, much, much higher damage rolls, which make it much more fun. And that's what makes this tank so unique. Being able to hatch on that tortoise at this sort of range. So we're getting huge amounts more damage just because we've got that Hesh, as long as it's used correctly. And in my opinion, the only way to fully use it correctly is to always be on that flank. Try not to be the one being shot at, so you can keep pumping in those huge damage shots. I mean, look at it from this perspective. A 1-2-1 is meant to be unique in the aspect of it does 400 damage a shot, and it has 245 standard alpha. This thing, with calibrated shells, has 231, and it has 440 alpha, and when you're doing maximum damage rolls, that's 550 to the back of that object 140. So yeah, the 1-2-1 was meant to be unique for that one thing. However, for the sake of, 14mm less penetration, I get an extra 40 alpha on top, and if I don't penetrate, I still do damage. A 1-2-1 won't. Also take into consideration, only difference remember is 14mm of penetration, but a 1-2-1 with a gun rammer has 2,478 DPM. This thing has over 3,500 with the Hesh. And for those who aren't aware of this, you'll notice I was aiming for the engine deck with that shot, just above the spaced armor. The reason being quite simply, this Hesh will not go through tracks and will not go through spaced armor. You will do some damage, of course, but you want to maximize that damage by getting penetrating shots. For an example, you could potentially penetrate the 50B turret. You can't penetrate the front upper plates with Hesh, but you can easily penetrate the sides. We are in a 2-on-4 here, by the way, so it's myself and my friendly Leo versus the 4 Reds, of which is about to be whittled down to a 2-on-2 situation. And in case you missed it, I did just shoot the gun on that 50B and do a big fat 0 damage. So, against us right now is an enemy E4 on full hit points, and the last time I saw the E100, he had just shy of half. Now, something important I want to point out. To some people, it's going to look like I'm abandoning my friendly Leo. That is in no means my intention. My intention was to try and split up. Quite simply, those two tanks between them could finish us both off with one shot each, pretty much. That would hurt. That would be a complete game changer. As it stands now, those tanks have to try and find 2 medium tanks. Hopefully, one on either side of them. So if they get lit up by me, hopefully my friendly Leo is in a situation where he can put shots in long range. Like that. And if they're focused on me, hopefully my friendly Leo would know to run around and relocate. Now, I was trying to flank that E4. Instead, I came across the E100, so I'm trying to hide from that E4. But we have a much faster reload than the E100. One shot in from the Leo as well. We do manage to finish the E100 off. And now we've got a bit of a role reversal again. I tried to take the flank last time while the E4 was distracted with the Leo. This time the Leo's going to do the same thing. So E4's after me, Leo's going to go around and try and take a shot into the back of the E4. As soon as he does that, the E4 instantly turns his turret and gets distracted, and that gives me my opportunity to make a break from cover and get straight onto the back of the E4. I made a mistake there, by the way. I fired APCR, and I should have fired the Hesh. I shot into the top engine deck, as you'll notice, and I would have done a lot more damage. End result is the same though. We're now on the back of this E4, and sadly there's nothing he can do, and that is down to the distraction of the Leo running the opposite direction, and then earlier me running in the opposite direction. So credit to that Leo, great team player, something you don't see often. But it does mean that with the Hesh, we did 6,157 damage and only made 535 credits. Great. The credit making on this thing is so bad. Yeah, credit to the T110E4 dead wagon on the enemy team. Also had a very, very good game and was carrying his team. And that is the exact reasons, pretty much, guys, why I'm happy to have the Hesh back on the FV4202 and the Centurion 7.1. Quite simply, you don't have the heat, you don't have the penetration, but you do have that crazy DPM as a result. and you do have very high alpha shots. So even if you're taking shot for shot with a Leo, popping in cover, you're both taking a shot at each other, you're gonna kill it first because it's doing less damage to you per shot than you're doing to it. Well, as long as you penetrate anyway. But when it comes to the other gun, my personal opinion, I know some people do prefer using the heat gun because it has the reliable penetration. But why would you play this tank with heat, except for the fact that you just like the tank, when there are so many other better tier 10 medium tanks that can use heat? What makes this thing special, what makes this thing unique, is that Hesh. No other tank can share that playstyle. Well, sorry, no other tier 10 medium tank can share that playstyle due to its lack of penetration and very high alpha. It's challenging, it's rewarding, but I'd still take a Centurion 7-1 instead of an FV4202. Hopefully we will see the arrival of a Centurion Action X. Turn or Sean Connery. What I was trying to say, Centurion Action X. I don't know why I said X. Right, I'm going to shut up now. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye bye.